Hey, welcome to the Virtually Speaking podcast, coverage of VMware Explore 2025. Today is general session day. There's been so many great announcements. And boy, John, we've got a great guest to sort of cover some of those general session announcements.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of announcements. There were a lot of features.
What kind of features were they? The Irish features, I think.
Yeah, a lot of Irish features, yes.
Yeah, and so joining us to talk about general session, one of the guys on the main stage, Paul Turner. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, delighted to be here. And it was a shitload of features, as we say in Ireland. So there you go.
That's the one, the Irish term for sure. So yeah, I would love to walk through some of the announcements. There's been a lot of great announcements this week, and we're going to be diving deep on a lot of those all week, for the next couple of weeks actually, with various subject matter experts. But I'd love to chat with you just at a high level on some of these and what they mean to our customers. Maybe starting with VCF 9 adoption in general. Last time I spoke to you was in Palo Alto, and we talked about just some of the new features in VCF 9. And now that we're here a couple of months later, what have you been hearing from customers?
Well, we were only launching it at that point, right? So that was back in May, June of this year.
Yeah.
And we delivered on our promise. We came here a year ago. We said we were going to deliver VCF 9. We've delivered on VCF 9. But, it was great to kind of hear some of the customers on stage, right? And you heard from Barclays, huge customer, of course, one of the biggest banks in the world, a top 20 bank. But their entire infrastructure is a private cloud infrastructure kind of built with us. They do fleet management with VCF, they do upgrades, so all of their automation is done through the VCF platform. But they're using it not just as, it's a private cloud for their AI applications as well as their VM-based applications as well as their container-based applications. So, just great to kind of see stories like that. We just announced about Walmart.
Yeah.
Number one Fortune company in the world. They're committed to the VCF platform. We're actually working with them right now on implementing that across all of their virtualized infrastructure.
Yeah, that's a lot of VCF going on.
That's a lot of VCF going on, and it's an interesting use case, right? It's an edge data center use case, right? It's at scale. There's just so many different examples of it. We've got many of our service providers are already enabling and powering new VCF 9 infrastructure and making that available as a service to customers. We've, of course, got our GPU capabilities that we built, and that I think, just extends this value of the AI services that we built into the product. And we've got people, I mentioned cloud service providers, people like NTT Data already building an AI as a service platform with us based on that. So it's good to see the adoption, good to see the growth, good to see the vibe here in Vegas with the customers that we have.
Absolutely, yeah. So many cool announcements. One of the ones that I thought was exciting was, private AI is amazing anyway, but seeing that it's now VCF and it's an actual, it's an actual service that's built inside of the core, I think that's exciting. And we talked to Chris Wolf a little bit about that, but what does that mean to customers to be able to, take advantage of private AI as part of the core offering?
Yeah, well, first, it's included from no extra cost. It's part of the VCF engine. But there's really two parts to kind of, what are we trying to do? We're trying to deliver AI applications as a service. Now, why would you do that? GPUs are costly. So take a server today. Server with CPUs, terabyte of memory, $30,000, somewhere like that, with an enterprise support agreement with it. You put in 4 GPUs into it, and suddenly it's a $150,000 server.
That first one I can put on my AMAX. The second one I'm going to have problems.
The one you can put on.
I'm going to have to go find a PO.
You've got a pretty healthy AMAX, but
don't expense it.
It's inefficiency in running those environments is just unacceptable. It has to move into what we did with virtualizing CPUs. It has to move into GPU as a service. We have to get more efficiency. But when we take the private AI as a service into the core, we're doing much more than that. We actually have a model manager to actually allow you to build secure private models that you're going to make available to all of your enterprise development groups, right? They're all out there building applications. They can all use the trusted models that are trusted by the enterprise, trusted by the security group inside in your enterprise. We give you the ability to do an inferencing service, and that inferencing service can actually deploy onto GPUs from all of our partners. We announced with AMD, we have NVIDIA support, we got Intel support, but also to CPUs. You can actually take your model and maybe you actually want to do it and deploy it into the edge. You can actually run the inferencing engine actually out on a CPU server. So we're really conscious of how do we give the enablement, the technology, and the capabilities so that development teams can actually build with their private data, build AI applications, and it should be part of an application set that they use on their infrastructure platform, which is everywhere, which is a VCF platform.
I like that story of like the governance and the life cycle in the models, because it's gone from AI being something that like some data science guys in the corner got a hold of a GPU are doing. And I mean, I didn't even think about CVEs and the security team having to approve a model or do internal trust reviews or scan that into Harbor, like just like you would check in open source code. You wouldn't just take some random, Docker file you found on the street on a USB drive and shove it in. Same with models. We got to go through that validation, but finding that pipeline to get that through, I think the models are very capable. I think a lot of companies have been struggling with finding that adoption pathway.
I think you're exactly right? And you have to be a little careful about the models that you use, because you've got to make sure that the IP that's inside in that model is not a prolific IP and going to impact you. The last thing you want to do is have a coding assistant that's actually using a prolific open source coding mechanism, and suddenly all of your code is rampant with open source.
I've acquired a license because of my model.
So why do you need control of your AI models? I mean, that's why we build a model store, so that you can actually go and decide what are the trusted ones. You got the inferencing engine, you got a RAG database now that's part of it, so we actually give you the ability to actually build
the vector database.
Yeah, the vector database. Basically, retrieval augmented generations. What we do is basically, kind of teach the model to ask the right questions. I mean, that's really what you're doing, and then giving context-sensitive answers so that you actually don't need to change necessarily the model, right? English language, Spanish language doesn't change all that much, but the context of the answer is the key thing.
I mean, I think the English language changes a lot if I talk to some teenagers, but I do like talking about this value here. This explains, because one other thing that I'm noting is, it has not been that long since 9.0 is released, but we're talking about all these adoption stories. Historically, whenever in our industry in general, if there's a .0 release or there's a fresh year release, people would wait for the service pack or wait for the .1 or things like that. But the value is there to find some type of use there. It is pulling people in, it sounds like.
It's pulling people in. And look, customers are also, and big enterprises, take the financial banks, the government entities. Those customers are actually going and doing POCs and tests with it now. And that's very encouraging, because what that means is they're actually looking at how do I actually deploy now into 9.1. And that's these biggest enterprises in the world moving quicker than they ever had. I think the excitement of the feature set is there, but it's not where we're stopping. I mean, today we announced a whole ton of cool new things, the shitload of new things that I was mentioning.
No, yeah, I like in Kubernetes space. There's been a lot of announcements as well. I mean, not only with partnerships like Canonical, but just certainly like I feel like there are a lot of folks that are focusing. Private AI, super exciting. And some of the partnerships that we're doing with all the different support for hardware. Where there's different use cases for private AI, and I love the fact that we're able to support all of those. Innovation is the thing that I keep thinking about. There's so much innovation happening with not only the partners that we're choosing, but also inside of VCF.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the kind of three areas that we shared today around those kind of innovation themes. I don't know what it is about product management. We always think of things in threes.
Yes.
But one of them is, how do we do an accelerated path to production? How do we actually help developers who are building, GitOps, CI/CD kind of pipeline delivery of applications? Want to be able to manage it in Git, want to be able to deliver it through my pipeline, automate that, do full infrastructure as code. And that means that I also control the firewall, I control all of the rules, I control all of that. But doing all of that and, really showcasing that agility, what that leads to is velocity of application development. And so that's huge. We just announced today database as a service.
Yeah.
So it's not just an IaaS stack. You actually get database as a service. You get Postgres, you get MySQL. We can actually do the management now of SQL Server. Of course, SQL Server license you manage yourself, but you actually do the management and deployment and HA and resiliency and make that all available out to the developers. An S3 object service available to developers. Policy control so that they can manage, as I said, all in code, every policy associated with the application. An Istio service mesh, so they want to build function as a service. And, all of that builds on top of our vSphere Kubernetes service. And vSphere Kubernetes service takes CNCF compliant Kubernetes, tested, validated, long-term support for that as well, and all of the packs, whether you look at Prometheus for monitoring, you look at Velero backup services, you look at Pinniped as I need to do identity management, all of the services that you actually need to run, maintained by us, delivered, updated by us. You don't need to be dealing with a hodgepodge of applications from open source. It's all part of the platform. Virtual machines, yes. Containers and Kubernetes-led applications, yes. And AI applications, as we talked about earlier, yes, in the VCF platform. So I think that's one huge area. A second area we touched on was private AI as a service. The third is cyber compliance, and we've got to get more serious. We kind of like, it's the silent killer that's there in the background. Cyber threats are increasing, they're getting worse, and we've got to take. So that's the third theme. So accelerated path to production, private AI as a service, and then advanced cyber compliance. How do we bring more security and trust for runtime environments?
And that is a lot. That is a lot of innovation and stuff. Yeah. It was a busy general session for sure, with announcements, with partners, and all of these great new features. Paul, thanks so much for joining us here on Virtually Speaking, and enjoy the rest of your week.